morning again, church. How you guys doing? I half believe it. Hey, third, fourth, fifth grade, junior high, you guys are dismissed back to your classes. Thanks for coming. Hey, if you're one of the people in the room that are like, I'm not sure if I should go to that meeting or not, like I'm not sure if God's calling me to serve in Grace Kids, just look at that group. He's calling you to serve in Grace Kids. I'm just telling you right now. As a nervous laughter goes across the room. Hey, it's okay. Hey, if you have your Bibles and you're going to follow along, we're going to be in Exodus chapter 10. I'm just going to dive right in. No opening story or anything like that. Normally, there's like a little funny anecdote here that kind of, I don't know, but that'll come later in the message. We're just going to dive right in because we got a lot to get through today. Last week, we started God versus Egypt part 1, right? Remember we talked about this heavyweight fight. And it's really not a heavyweight fight because we know who's going to win, but God is setting up this heavyweight fight between himself and the gods of Egypt. He says in 12:12, he said, I'm doing all of this so I can show you that I'm God over everything, that they're nothing. And so here we're at part 2. We quickly ran through a lot of the plagues, and we even kind of set some parameters that we weren't going to look at every one. But today we're going to look at 2 specific ones leading up to the last one. We're going to look at plagues 8 and 9. Which all take place in Exodus chapter 10. And so if you have a Bible and you want to follow along, I would invite you to jump in there. If you didn't bring a Bible, we'll have the verses on the screen, or you could pull up like the U version and follow along there. But let's dive in just really quickly. Exodus verses 10, and we're going to look at the first 2 verses, and then we'll pause for just a minute. Then the Lord said to Moses, this is Exodus 10, chapter 10, verse 1, go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants. And if you struggle with that, I would invite you to watch last week's message, and I talked about that I may show these signs of mine among them, and that you may tell in the hearing of your sons and your grandsons how I have dealt harshly with the Egyptians and what signs I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord. And so right here in the first 2 verses, we see that God's plan is a threefold purpose. And last week, where I made you wait for a really long time before you got to start to write stuff in your sermon guide, this week we're going to dive right in. And the threefold purpose, purpose 1 is it was simply to rescue the Jewish people, right? We know that from Exodus chapter 1, from way back in January when we started looking at this series. That's one of the main reasons God is doing what he's doing, is to bring his people out of slavery, out of exile, back into a land flowing with milk and honey. Purpose 2, so that he could show his signs and wonders. Part of God's plan was just to show off that he was God. And it may seem like, well, wait a second, like the plagues were kind of bad, but listen, he's showing off his signs and wonders, and don't just get stuck in the plagues for where we're at. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to look at over the next little bit as we go through this series, where God's going to show off his signs and wonders, like parting the Red Sea and coming down and showing Moses his Shekinah glory, and the manna and the water from the rock and the quail and all kinds of stuff. That's the second purpose of God's plan. And purpose number 3 that we see here in verse 2 of Exodus chapter 10 was to remind the Jewish people that he was God. I think what we lose a little bit is the realization that over the course of 400 years of slavery, the Jewish people, or the Israelites, had completely, or for the most part, not all of them, but had abandoned the worship of the one true God of Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they had adopted the worship of the Egyptian gods. They would worship the Egyptian gods, the gods of their masters. And so part of God's plan is to remind the Jewish people that he was God, not just God, but their God, the one that created them and drew them out, the one that picked Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and is leading them through and has something great for them. Verse 2, and that you may tell in the hearing of your sons and your grandsons. We should notice how God would remind his people that he was God. That you may tell your son and grandson. It's not just this, but it's the remembering of what God's done over and over and over again, and telling your kids about that. Parents, look at me. You're charged with reminding your kids that God is God and that he's in control. Can I give you an example from my life that happened yesterday? Yes, one person said, thank you. That person, I have the microphone. I'm going to give it to you anyways. As many of you know, my youngest daughter, Harper, broke the tibia tuberosity, I said that right, of her left leg. It's healing, and then she had a bone bruise on her right leg. And so Harper's knees have dominated our life discourse for the last 8 or 9 weeks. That and my tooth has dominated kind of our life right now. And she's struggling because it's a lot of work to get her to PT and back and forth and kind of all of this stuff and the doctor's appointments. And she missed a lot of school. And we'd had a conversation yesterday afternoon, and then Becky and I left to go to a graduation party, and I'm sitting at the graduation party, and my phone buzzes. It goes, bzz, bzz, and it pulls up, and it's Josie's phone because Harper doesn't have a phone yet. And Harper, as she often does when she sends a text message, she goes, "This is Harper." She wants you to know who it is. This is Harper, okay? And she says this. She goes, "Hey, Dad." Is it my 11 or 12? 12-year-old daughter. Sorry. I don't even remember how old I am. Don't judge me. I always give myself a couple of years. She says, "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry about my knees." And I say to Harper, "Harper, it's okay. It's called being a parent. I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't wish your leg got broken, but it's life. It happens." And she says, "Okay, but it's still really hard, Dad." She goes, "I feel like Satan is attacking us." She spelled it Satan, but I understood that she meant Satan. And then I said to her, "It is hard." I said, "And Satan may be attacking us." I said, "Or God could have brought us here to shape and mold us in a way that he couldn't where we were without you having broken legs." I said, "Either way, what I know is that God is going to win, and because he's going to win, we're going to win as well." And Harper says, "It's tiring, but you're right. God will win." It's an opportunity to remind my daughter that God is God and that he's going to win. And then she gets to the really important question of the text conversation: can we watch TV? Are the floors done? Yes, right. Feel free to watch TV. The third purpose of God's plan is to remind the Jewish people and us that he is God. And it is our responsibility as parents and grandparents, and maybe you don't have kids and you're like, "Hey, I don't have kids, I'm scot-free." Nuh-uh. Nope, that's not how it works. We're the family of God. And so by extension, you have an ability to speak into the life of the next generation as you see them. You see a kid like tearing down and putting away chairs, you should give them a high five and tell them, "Great job." You see a kid going squirrely, you should grab them. Don't just let them go squirrely and go, "Man, I wish that kid wouldn't go squirrely." Like, grab them and say, "Hey, slow down 1 second. How's it going?" Have a conversation with them. Remind them that God is God and that he is good. There's 2 girls like running around in little hats today. I forget who it was. Alora was one of them. She walked in, and man, she just looks like the bee's knees. And it's great to tell her she looks good in her hat, and she gets this really big smile. Not my daughter, but an opportunity to speak truth and life and beauty into somebody. Don't miss that opportunity as we're in church. Can we watch TV? Is what she said. Chapter 10, verse 3. Let's go. That's enough of personal anecdotes. Verse 3, chapter 10. So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh, just like God had told him. And he said, "Thus saith the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your country, and they shall cover the face of the land so that no one can see the land. And they shall eat what is left to you after the hail, and they shall eat every tree of yours that grows in the field, and they shall fill your houses and your houses of all your servants and all of the Egyptians, as neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen from the day they came onto the earth to this day." Then he turned and went out from Pharaoh. And then we have this interaction. So Moses and Aaron are gone, and so then we have this interaction between Pharaoh and his servants. These are his advisors in verse 7. It says, "Then Pharaoh's servants said to him, 'How long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not understand that Egypt is ruined? Pharaoh's servants are begging him, like, please just let them go. We have been devastated. We're never going to overcome this. Let them go. Let them go serve so that nothing else may befall us. Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined? But here's what I know as I look at the life of Pharaoh and I read these words is that you can be so blinded by your sin that you can't see the truth right in front of you. Remember when we talked about God, when it says that he hardened Pharaoh's heart, he was just giving Pharaoh over to what he already desired, that Pharaoh's heart was like that clay that was hardened under God's gaze. And so God was giving him over to the sin that he'd already desired in his life. And sometimes you can be so addicted to whatever sin it is in your life that you can't see the truth right in front of you. And it's devastating consequences not only to you, but to your family and by extension, all of those around you. For me, listen, here's one of the things that I struggle with. I struggle with controlling how much food I eat. When I get nervous or anxious or happy or sad or depressed or just nothing's happened, I like to eat food. You guys get the picture? I just like to eat food all the time. And I struggle with portion control. And so for me, like, listen, y'all, I'm addicted to eating food. Like, I have very little self-control. One of the side effects of my addiction to food, aren't you glad that we don't have a front row? Now, listen, I feel better today than I did last week. I lost 11 pounds this last week. Don't clap. That's not, don't hate it. But I feel better this week than I did last week. But still, like, the gym is cold. Like, people are shivering in here, and I'm just pouring sweat because I have this problem. And so I have to recognize it's an issue in my life. Now, I could choose to not acknowledge it, and I can swell up to like 325, 330, and I've been there before. Or I can acknowledge it, that it's an issue. I'm addicted to it. I let it control me. I desire it, sometimes more than I desire other things. So for me, listen, this is crazy. The way that I eat becomes a sin issue in my life because it dominates everything about me. And so like for me, banana pudding. Vinny had it at his graduation. Josh had it at his graduation party yesterday. And we got up and I was like, hey, it's time to go. And Becky's like, you're not going to have any banana pudding? And I was like, get behind me, Satan. I didn't say that, but I wanted to. Because it's an issue, right? I know if I go do it, it's not just one thing. Like, I may control that portion, but it opens the floodgates for me. And then I go home and I have this and I have that and then I do this and I have that and I eat this and I eat that. And the next thing I know, the scale's not where I want it to be. This is constant battle. And so you have to recognize those things in your life. Are you being blinded by the sin that's right in front of you that you can't even see the truth that's right there? The truth for Pharaoh is that his country was destroyed. The gods of Egypt had nothing on Yahweh. They couldn't do anything. And anytime they did try to do something, they just made the plague worse. And his servants are saying, dude, please just let him go. You're making it worse and worse and worse. And he refuses to acknowledge what's going on. And so he tries to do this little subterfuge. Verse 8. So Moses and Aaron were brought back into Pharaoh, and he said to them, go, serve the Lord your God. And he asked this question, but which ones are to go? Verse 9, Moses said, we will go with our young and our old. We will go with our sons and daughters and with our flocks and herds, for we must all hold a feast to the Lord. So Moses is saying, everybody's going to go, and we're going to take everything that we have with us. Pharaoh's response, verse 10. But he said to them, the Lord be with you. If I ever let you and your little ones go, look, you have some evil purpose in mind. No, go just the men among you and serve the Lord, for that is what you are asking. And they were driven from Pharaoh's presence. He's so blinded by his sin that he can't see the truth right in front of him. We keep reading in verse 12. We're going to read a lot here. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every plant in the land, and all that the hail is left, because right before this there was the plague of hail. So Moses stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind, this miraculous east wind, up from the land all day and all night. And when it was morning, the east wind had brought the locusts. The locusts came up over all of the land of Egypt and settled over the whole country of Egypt. We'll get more to that in just a second. Such a dense swarm of locusts had never been before, nor ever will be seen again. Now that's important to note. Never had one been seen like it, and never again will one be seen. They covered the face of the whole land so that the land was darkened, and they ate all of the plants in the land and all of the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of field, all the land of Egypt. Then, verse 16, then Pharaoh hastily called Moses and Aaron and said, I have sinned against the Lord your God. Now, this is like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th, 100th time that Pharaoh has said this. Is it familiar in your heart? That same sin over and over and over again. You're like, God, man, why did I fall? I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm going to do better next time. And then you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Maybe we could put our name where Pharaoh's name is. Now, therefore, forgive my sin. Notice he's asking Moses to forgive. His focus is in the wrong place. Please, only this once, and plead with the Lord your God, only to remove this death from me. So he went out from Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord, and the Lord turned the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left in all of the country of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go. Now remember, it says in there that it's the largest swarm, like nothing like it had ever been seen, and nothing will ever be seen like it before. Now, I don't think we understand like how big like a locust swarm can be. So I did a little research this week, and you're just going to geek out with me for a second on the science, okay? The largest swarm of locusts that's ever been recorded in history happened in America in 1867. It was 1,800 miles long and 110 miles wide, and it swept the Great Plains from Canada down to Texas. Now, a locust swarm can contain up to 3 million locusts per square mile. I did the math several times over this week. I even checked myself 3 or 4 times this morning. But that locust swarm from it's 1875, I'm sorry, not 1867, contained 594 billion locusts in it. Now, locusts are devastating. They eat everything, and especially in Egypt back in that day, they would have eaten, we know that because it says they ate all of the crops that were in the land, all of the trees and everything. So they ate all of the food for the next year, because that's what they were growing, was food for next year. But they also would have eaten all the food for this year that was grown last year. Locusts will eat plant-based clothing. So if you have like cotton clothing or any kind of stuff that the Egyptians would have worn, they would have eaten it all. Everything would have been devastated. Everything would have been gone. They would have just been completely devastated. But here's the thing, I say that, and I don't think we actually understand how big 594 billion is. So I did a little bit of more research, and I turned it into something that I think that we may understand, and that's dollars. Okay? Everybody like money? Okay. Everybody's nervous. Like, is that a trick question? This is church. Am I supposed to say yes? We all like it when something's in our bank account, not when it's zero, so it's okay. All right. Imagine, if you will, somebody gave you $1 million. We're all instant millionaires right now. But you had one qualification. You had to spend $1,000 every day without fail. Any guesses on how long your $1 million would last if you spent $1,000 a day? 3 years. $1,000 a day for 3 years, $1 million would last. And let's say we do that. 3 years, we spend $1,000 a day. It's beautiful. We all drive Bentleys or Mercedes. We all have big houses. It's great. Our money runs out, and we go back to the same person, the same benefactor, and they go, here's $1 billion each. $1,000 a day, you have to spend How long do you think it lasts? 2,740 years. And we're talking about 594 billion locusts. That's a one with 1, 2, 3, 4, with 15 zeros behind it. That's how many years if it was money. This thing would have been devastating. It would have dominated the national discourse. It would have devastated everything. It would have killed every living tree. A tree can survive if it loses half of its foliage. But it needs leaves to produce this thing called photosynthesis, right? That produces food for it so it can recover from the damage. Just before the locust was hail. Stripped leaves, broke branches, and then the locusts come in and they eat everything. This would have devastated, without anything else, this alone would have wiped out the Egyptian country for years to come. It would have been absolutely devastating. And yet, Pharaoh still doesn't get it. We pick up our reading in verse 21 of Exodus chapter 10. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand towards the heaven, so that there may be a darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness to be felt." So Moses stretched out his hand towards heaven, and there was pitch darkness in the land of Egypt for 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days, but all of the people of Israel had light where they lived. See, the 9th plague was an all-out attack on Egypt. Where the other things were like these physical things, the 9th plague, the darkness, would have been like psychological warfare, because there was no god greater in Egypt than the sun god Ra. In Egyptian theology and practice, it's very significant, this plague. It struck at the heart of Egyptian worship, and it humbled Egypt's greatest gods. The sun god Ra was considered the greatest blessing in the land of Egypt. They would say that his faithfulness in providing warmth and light day after day without fail caused them great joy. And they expressed joy over the faithfulness of this deity, the sun god Ra, in Egypt. But it wasn't just him. It was an all-out attack. Amun-Re, he was the chief god in Thebes. He was also another sun god in Egypt, as well as his wife Mut and son Konos, both also associated with light. It's utter darkness. Don't miss this. It was so dark they didn't even get up and leave their house. Can you imagine this? But then they look across the way, and in the Egyptian houses there's light, and they're going about their normal day. Jewish houses, and they're going about their day. But it didn't just stop with those gods that I've named. Aten was a deified god, the sun disk. So there was Ra, the sun god, but then the actual disk of the sun was a separate god that they worshipped. This god Atum in Lower Egypt was the god of the setting sun. Egypt also worshipped a god called Capri, and they appeared as a beetle, and it was another form of the sun god Ra. Horus, another main god in Egyptian theology, was often symbolized as a sun disk. Another goddess, Hothar, was the god of the sky and love and joy. And Thoth, the moon god. And so this darkness that lasted for 3 days was an all-out attack on the Egyptian theology of their gods and who they worshipped. It would have been the height of psychological warfare for the Egyptian people. Blood, flies, gnats, locusts, boils, dead livestock, hail, locusts, thing after thing after thing after thing, but still, in spite of all of that, the sun still came up every day. And it still set every night, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, without warning, it's complete and utter darkness, so dark that you could feel the oppression on your body and in your spirit. And God is putting his stamp on it and saying, I am God and you are not. And what was Pharaoh's response to all of this? Look at verse 28. Then Pharaoh said to him, this is Moses and Aaron, God's representatives, get away from me. take care never to see my face again, for on the day that you see my face, you shall die. Verse 29, Moses said, as you say, I will not see your face again. You can be so blinded by your sin that you can't see the truth right in front of you. But church, here's what I know. We serve a God of one more chance. We serve a God of one more chance to the single mom that's trying to figure it out. We serve a God of one more chance to the mom and dad just trying to make a way to pay the bills and get through the day. We serve a God of one more chance for that prodigal son or daughter who you've been praying for over years, trying to figure a way to get them back home. We serve a God of one more chance. He even gave Pharaoh one more chance. Look at it with me. Chapter 11, verses 1 and 2 and 3. Then the Lord said to Moses, yet one more plague I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. And listen, he's not going to let you go. All right, and afterwards he will let you go. When he lets you go, he will drive you away completely. Speak now in the hearing of all the people. And they will ask every man of his neighbor and every woman or her neighbor for silver and gold jewelry. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of people. We serve a God of one more chance. He was giving Pharaoh one more chance. But listen, it's one more chance till it's not anymore. And at some point, and we're going to look at it next week, God will judge. Today is one more chance for you that maybe you're running from God. It's one more chance for you that are far from God, that you're not even sure why you're here this morning. For you, it's one more chance that you're stuck in this rut and you're trying to figure out, and you're like, I don't know what to do. He's just saying one more chance. Just step out in faith one more time. He's not giving up on you. Don't give up on him, church.